All right, 8:05. I think it's safe to say we can start. Latecomers, yeah, it's their own fault. I'm sorry. So with me is Arnaud Chemin, and I can pronounce it properly because I know French. I don't know, Arnaud Chemin or something that the English would say. Arnaud Chemin is a recent graduate at the renowned TypeMedia master course at KBK. But he is a graphic designer and type designer, studied graphic design in Paris, then moved to the equally renowned ESAT Amiens, and then followed master program in ECAL, dedicating himself to type design. Did an internship with Jean-François Porcher at Typo-Fonderie, also worked and still works with Black Foundry. You just still collaborate with them.
Yeah.
And yes, I would say that's enough for introduction. 90 people came in. I hope some more people can join us. And I would ask the marvelous tech team who are supporting us to start the video. And then after that, we can answer some questions. If you have questions, go to the chat box, but click the little interrogation mark, because otherwise I have to search through chat history and it's a drag. So ask your questions in the appropriate section of the chat box. So tech team, if you can start the video, thank you so much.
Hello everybody. Thank you for taking the time to listen and or watch my presentation. My name is Arnaud, and my talk today is about the TypeMedia project I did last academic year. Maybe it is good to say it. I assume people know TypeMedia, but just in case, it is a one-year master program dedicated to type design in the Netherlands. So as you can read on your screens, I will discuss the relation between both upper and lowercase and how I adapted one to the other using the stroke principles of Roman capitals. I will detail how I did it through some historical examples, calligraphy, drawings, and proofs. In order to start a personal project, there is a basic but important requirement. It has to start with the love story. So like many type designers, I'm a huge fan of Roman capitals and carved letters. And I knew I wanted to act in this era. But then, simply by observing some well-known typefaces, there was this issue I found myself in front of. Trajan doesn't have lowercase. It's not kind of a bad sorcery. There are some historical reasons to it. Trajan is a revival made out of an inscription, and there were no lowercase at the time when those letters were carved. So thanks to this beautiful timeline, you can see the first lowercase model arrived much later in history. See the Caroline primitive in the red frame. So lowercase are the result of an uppercase distortion through centuries. And this little Caroline will become the basis for the humanistic writing style 200 years after, during the Renaissance. So finally, this humanistic, or also called Venetian model, will be the basis again for early printing characters. It is interesting to notice that those fonts are composed of Roman rationalized capitals, meaning they have a vertical axis, and the lowercase relate to humanistic writing with a diagonal axis. And in order to bring them in a closer relation, early punch cutter used to add serif to the lowercase bottom so they would be more stable and look closer to uppercase. But there was no thinking about creating new lowercase from the capitals. Then we became used to it, but let's see how we can go further, because from a calligraphic point of view, it seems to be an inconsistent mix. Here we are, what Brownie uppercase could look like and what brush lowercase could look like. Previous example used to mix top left with bottom right. And I had some trouble finding a lowercase model which has been thought as Roman capitals. Pretty uncommon. So this bottom left example is questionable, but it's a very nice experiment and a key element for starting the project. In order to achieve such an historical conciliation, we have to take a closer look at Roman capitals. What are their proportions and how they are constructed with the brush? So on the left side, there are some geometric guidelines in which groups of letters fit. The letters are drawn, and I think it's important to mention here. On the right side, there are some stroke modules that can either be used for groups of letters, and the letters are painted. Now let's see how the brush behaves as a tool. On the left side, we observe the freedom such a tool offers. Using angle rotation allows infinite variations in weight and contrast. And this is also why Roman capitals are so hard to calligraphy. The brush is a very difficult tool to control due to its flexibility. Other tools as nibs are more rigid and they define very specific kind of shapes. And this has been studied by Gerrit Notzai in the well-known stroke theory. After observing and thinking, it was time to practice. And these are some personal calligraphy attempts. Pretty high contrast, weird proportions, not so well done, but still something regarding the time I had to work on this. It helped me at least to understand better how capitals are done. And if you really want to practice, I invite you to look at John Stevens' calligraphy. He is the master. Here on this slide, I'm sharing a layout template I made in order to practice. It could be useful to have guidelines as a beginner. Also consider your brush size to define the square height, then just write your letter in. But let's get back to the main subject, the lowercase design. At that time, I did not know what to do about the serifs. The drawing looks more like a stone carving design. Notice that you can do a lowercase a from a reversed S shape. It was an interesting discovery for me. These letters are mainly squarish with direct top stem connections. And I was telling myself, why would you do a curve if you can go straight? Well, this will change after because typography is also about optical adjustments when it comes to small size reading. During the process, the decision of making a text type is settled, so I had to adjust the design. Thicker serifs, more weight, lower contrast, looser spacing, and lower stem connections. Some strokes, like the ending of the F, became more broad-nibby-like, matching the R because the other way was not enough dark in small size. Also, overall end shapes became wider to perform a better rhythm. The final result is more robust. This slide displays how I tried to keep the same kind of module for some letters like B, C, D, P, Q. The lowercase q is actually an alternate glyph. This will not fit good in long text reading. Also, maybe the uppercase U would benefit of a stem on the right side, so it would better match the lowercase u. I kept the no touching stroke of uppercase P on the lowercase, so it brings another Roman capital touch. The stroke modulations of N, M, E, H, they belong to the brush and calligraphy. I think I'm pretty much done with the concept of adapting lowercase, but I would like to get into more detailed considerations about the typeface. Uppercase round stroke connection has a nice overshoot. Lowercase b, p, d, q bows are not symmetric despite they look like they are. All the stems are flared, serifs are not flat and their endings are curved according to brush behavior. It also brings a nice metal type feeling. Lowercase n unrelated letter forms have asymmetric serif ending. and T, E, F, G endings are either curved in order to avoid pointy digital feedings. In general, there are very short amount of straight lines in this design, which makes it quite complex. The most of the decisions I took in drawing were not led by the vector influence. I really wanted the design to look like hand drawing, like masters of the last century used to do. Maybe it is also interesting to show more about the materials I've been through during the process. Those examples contain related letterforms and similar design approach. I tried to choose less common references so it would be more interesting for you to discover them. On the left, the two squared pictures display Jeff Boudin's work, a Belgian letterer, and on the right side, letterings examples of Eugène Nerdinger. Here are some typefaces that for some reasons influenced my choices. Sumner Stone's Populus is also based on the same idea of a better relation between upper and lowercase. And it's a very nice thing to realize that working from the same starting point, it can lead to different results. Because we are different persons with different backgrounds and histories, but we still share ideas. On the other hand, I always loved Perpetua despite Eric Gill's controversy. The BPDQ letterforms are very peculiar. And this feature is also very specific to my project. Well, I swear I'm almost done. I decided not to speak further about the rest of the family. However, I will say that the principle I used to start the project couldn't be applied to the italic, because there was no italic form of capitals to start from, so I had to deal with it. Then I believe it is still worth it to look at the styles all together. Next slides will be about showing off applications and specimens. I'm a bit sad not being able to show more text samples because screen doesn't render as well as paper. But what I like about the typeface is its, so to say, invisible aspect in small size. It really looks like a typeface you might have seen before, but it's completely new. So there is this quote I like very much. It's not from me, but it says, "It is far more difficult to be simple than to be complicated." I think this sentence resumes pretty well how I try to bring this project to another level of reading experience. Here are some uncommon in-use examples just for fun. Letters made out of ornaments, stones using italics, condensed, swashes, and a track. Some book cover pastiches using épître. Compositions showing the typeface features with some more or less traditional layouts. And finally, a random composition that looks cool on Instagram. If you want to know more about other students' work from TypeMedia, our website will be soon online with detailed explanation of everybody's process. I warmly invite you to have a look at it. This is it. Thank you for your attention, and thanks ATypI for allowing me to participate. If you have any questions or requests, please don't hesitate and send me a mail. I would reply as soon as possible. Bye bye.
Okay, thank you so much, Arnaud. If people want to see the typeface on his website, arnaudchemin.com, you can click that link where you can scroll through some samples and examples made with the typeface. Very interesting italic shapes, I must say. There's like things happening there that are really surprising and fun. It's nice. There's something that we don't think about often enough I think that these capitals and the lowercase come from such disparate sources, and somehow they were smashed together to create this kind of protoform that all classic serif typefaces followed for I don't know how many centuries.
Yeah.
So you just looked at it, you said like, this doesn't, it works, but it's not logical. And you, what was your impetus? Like, you want to solve this? Was this something, this one moment, or was this something in your something that came gradually?
Well, actually, this mix of shape is very common, so people are really used to it. So it's not something you notice especially, but it's in front of you. So it's kind of obvious, but not obvious. Um, Realizing it came through also the studies we made in TypeMedia, because we studied the tool, how the tool behave, and what are related letter forms. So I think it's also because this tool axis is not so spread in the north-side theory. He mostly speaks about the pointed nib and the broad nib, but there is no much information about the brush. I also have kind of interest for history and calligraphy, which is personal. There are some people who really enjoy digital and coding, and well, it's up to everybody interests.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that people who know a little less about the history of the creation of the actual forms is that even though those capitals were engraved in stone, their origin is also in brushwork, right?
Yeah, so there is this difficult distinction between painted and carved letters, because yeah, if you look at Trajan, well, for sure they've been carved, and they've certainly been drawn before. So not all capitals were painted. If you have a look at Rustica, for example, it's obviously painted. It's kind of those condensed Roman capitals you can see on ruins in Italy, painted on walls. But yeah, carved letters are more drawn than painted, actually. Yeah.
So TypeMedia often has this focus on the actual tools that you use to create letter forms.
Yeah.
Have you, like, when you compare the brush and then the pen, especially the broad nib pen, because you could argue that the flat paintbrush has similar properties as the broad nib pen because it has a wide part, but it's narrow in itself. Do you see, like, did that translate in a similar way when you're trying this out?
I think they're pretty similar tools. There is one which is rigid, and the other one is more flexible. Yeah,
Flexible.
this is where the difference is. You can always achieve kind of a capital feeling with the broad nib pen, but it's like more about cheating. Like in calligraphy, you can always cheat. You redraw details, so it's not really like, it's not so faithful. uh, yes, to answer the previous question, yes, TypeMedia is very oriented into tool, because they believe, we believe that the tool is more a better way to categorize typefaces than serifs, sans serif, mechanical, Egyptians, whatever.
Yes.
So it just opens a broader perspective on design. And by tool, they also mean technological tool. So it's not just like monks in writing stuff. And it's also about technology and coding and building their own digital tool. Yeah.
I moderated the Rob Minch's session just 2 sessions ago, and also there the type classification came up. The everybody goes back to the Vox ATypI classification, but it is problematic. Do you have, because you approach now this, what you actually did is by reimagining the lowercase, you actually subverted the classical classification, because you have taken a type style that is historically like, sorry for the words, carved in stone, and you change it around, but it's still there in this classification. So do we need to reclassify what you did?
That's a good question. To answer well, I would say that there is the kind of carved axis in the theory we're in, but from Vox point of view, it's almost impossible to classify. You would say, okay, well, it's serif, but then I don't know. Like, can you, for example, I feel like my project is pretty close to anti-collive in the way the stroke are modulated, but it doesn't look like it, but it's just the same idea behind the same modulation. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, no, it's a difficult question. And I must say, I'm going to say it here as well, because we said it. I'm going to try to find it where we mentioned it. There is actually a talk about classification, about unvoxing the type classification, and it's I can't find it right now, but it's hold on. Yeah, it is tomorrow. I'm sorry, I can't find it right away. Maybe I mention it in the Hangout. Are there any questions from the audience? Because I see quite a few type designers in there, some familiar names. I think there are also your co-students. Some of them are here to support you. I saw you say hello to a few people. So either this was super clear, which I think I had no problems. I'm not a type designer myself, and I found it really well built, and the argument makes perfect sense. But I don't know if anybody else has something to ask. I don't think so. So what I suggest is we can move this to a more informal section, which is the Hangout room. If anybody, wait, there is one question. Yeah. Finally, okay, that's interesting. Maybe for the prestige. So Sophia Tai is curious about why you did a second master's in type design, because you already had one.
Well, I didn't. I had half one actually. So I did master 1 in Swiss and master 2 in the Netherlands. That's it. It's just I just switched. I just been trying both, but
is there any? I don't know if it's fair to ask you. I don't know if this is compromising, but is there a comparison between the approach in TypeMedia and the approach in what is it? I always forget the name. Is Satorical? The Ecale, so I always mix them up.
Well, in my opinion, the difference is in the way they teach you. In Cal, it's more about verticality and drawing and geometry. And in the Netherlands, in Arabica, is more about calligraphy and revival and more traditional, I think. I don't want to say traditional in a pejorative way, because it's very, I think this is why I changed, but
because you see, I understand what you're saying, because much of the work that comes out of KBK is forward thinking, but it's deeply rooted in tradition, and it's the knowledge of what came before and how can we use this to create new shapes and new forms of expression in typography. So indeed, that's what you say. Hold on. Okay, this is interesting. Hrant came in. He had to be in and out. But Hrant Papazian asked, have you studied the work of Cassandre? And he means this relating to the lower relationship of the lowercase to the uppercase.
Wait, I'm trying to remind me which one of Cassandre you're talking about, like Bifur or
Yeah,
because he made. I think this is Bifur.
Peño, Peño.
Peño. Okay. Wait. No, Peño is which letter? I mean the lowercase to the uppercase. Let me just please have a look at the typeface. Yeah. There are some similarities, but yeah, it's a bit geometric. What Cassandra did. It's about modules, sure.
But your main, well, it's not source of inspiration, but there are kind of parallels that we can see with IDs that are present in Perpetua and Spectrum. So these are the touchstones that kind of relate to your work, right?
It was Populus and
Sorry.
yeah, no worry. And there are plenty of stone carving typefaces which I think you can find, like Elan from Albert Botton.
Yeah, indeed.
Those kind of even if I would say Albertus, not sure, but yeah.
So you would say that your design comes more from stone carving conceptual tradition than from an actual calligraphic tradition.
Well, it's a bit in between.
Okay.
Yeah. It's hard to tell, but yeah, I think it has roots in both sides because stone carving is very, very incised letters and very drawn letters, so it's also it comes also it has very similar aspects.
Okay. Very interesting. I think there are no more questions. If anybody still wants to ask a question, do it now, because otherwise I would invite everyone to move to the Hangout room if they feel like it. Again, the Hangout room is something very informal. There's people, sometimes there's 4 people, you see them working at their side screen and not saying anything. And sometimes there's like spontaneous eruptions of discussions about the industry, impromptu, like career advice. It's crazy. It's really fun. So don't be disappointed if you show up and nothing happens, because anything could happen anytime. Thank you so much, Arnaud. Thank you for sharing your project with us. It was really interesting. Stuff that maybe some of us know but don't think hard enough about. So it's good to see these ideas. You're getting thank yous from the people, and I would say let's stop this here and let's move over to the Hangout room to continue the conversation if anybody feels like it. Okay, thank you again, and goodbye.
Bye.